It's that time of year again, where we're going to rank every single F1 race this year from worst to best. If you do enjoy this video, consider clicking that subscribe button, and this video I'm showing here is this 2007 F1 video I did, where it shows Lewis Hamilton losing the 2007 World Championship. Let's get into it straight away then, and in last place is the Monaco Grand Prix. In my opinion, nothing's going to beat this bore-fest for the worst race of this year. Normally, I mean, it depends what you're judging off, what you like your F1 Grand Prix, but I like a lot of crashes and chaos and all sort of things like that, rain and all of that. And obviously, we had a huge crash at the start with Sergio Perez, the Alpines colliding, the Haas and Perez, like I said, come together. It was all sorts of chaos, it was brilliant, and of course, Sainz had a puncture as well, so it was all chaos on the opening lap. But from there was like 5 overtakes, and it was so boring. Stroll getting a puncture was probably the only thing that happened for the last 40 laps of the race, and it's kind of disappointing really, because we could have had a good race. Then we have Bahrain, started the year, and this is what gave us dread, because Verstappen dominated. Red Bull was so far ahead, even Sergio Perez managed to get onto the podium. Lewis Hamilton for Mercedes was absolutely lackluster, only finishing 7th in what a car that easily should have finished in the top 6. Hamilton only just got 7th after the pit stops on his way to a pretty lackluster race where he should have finished at least in the top 6. George Russell and Charles Leclerc had a fight late on for 4th, with Charles Leclerc having loads of lockups in the race. Carlos Sainz went on it and finished 3rd, but it was pretty boring. Next up, we have the Singapore Grand Prix, a race which I thought was going to be brilliant, but in the end was absolutely awful. At the start, Lando Norris led off the line, and we all knew from that moment nothing was going to happen. Verstappen and Hamilton went wheel to wheel a bit at the start, but then he slipped away, ultimately finishing 6th. And I just think if Hamilton's not in the mix fighting, I know I'm biased, I'm a Hamilton fan, I don't even feel the race is particularly exciting, because when he gets into the mix, normally something happens. In fact, Mercedes in general, if they're in the mix for a race win, it's kind of exciting. Think Singapore 2023. Lando Norris dominated really, but he nearly crashed and threw it away, and that was it. Basically, Singapore and the Dutch Grand Prix are the exact same race really, except Max got the lead at the start of the race, with Lando Norris in 2nd and George Russell in 3rd position. From there, Max and Lando had a short fight for the lead, and Lando Norris got past and went on to dominate. The reason why it's ahead though is because there was a couple of fights. Sainz started down the order along with Hamilton, and they came through the field. Charles Leclerc also beat Piastri to 3rd, which was an overachievement by Charles Leclerc, and an underachievement by Oscar Piastri. And I think it was a fun enough race, which I would call Imola, to be honest. In fact, this is a pretty fun race. The start, in fact, the first 50 laps of this race was so boring. However, as time passes, you kind of forget about stuff that happened in the races, and though I watched all of like the highlights on YouTube before I made this video, I didn't obviously watch the full race because that would take forever. And Imola for me, nothing happened at all, but the ending was just brilliant. Finally seeing the end of Verstappen's domination in front of our eyes was good. Then next up is Japan, which started like Monaco with a red flag after a shunt involving Daniel Ricciardo and Alex Albon, which set the stage for Albon and Williams crashing in like every race. From there, we saw some good midfield battles, but Verstappen absolutely dominated, and although Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc had a little fight with Perez, nothing happened. We then go to Saudi Arabia, which I thought was actually pretty good. Behrman kind of delivered from 11th on the grid. He probably should have knocked out Lewis Hamilton, but he didn't. Speaking of Lewis Hamilton, him and Lando Norris stayed out, so we briefly saw someone other than Max Verstappen leading the race, should I say. Alonso, though, was good for Aston Martin too. But apart from that, we went to Australia, where the only reason really it's ahead is because we actually saw Max Verstappen actually DNF from a race. You know, you could be a Verstappen fan or not, but I'm pretty sure everyone wanted to see a race where Max Verstappen didn't win. He'd won about, if I just do get my calculations right, he won 18 out of the last 20 races heading into this race. So that just wasn't good. But the run finally ended. Hamilton was out with a failure, and so was Max Verstappen. And I have to say, I was actually happy after 5 laps. Then we go to China, where this was a fun, early dominated race by Max Verstappen. He started on pole and dominated. Sergio Perez, however, in what is going to be, potentially, could be his last Formula 1 podium, he managed to finish in 3rd position, with Lando Norris managing to set his season alive by finishing in 2nd. Lewis Hamilton made a recovery drive from all the way down in 18th position. We then head to the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, which some people say is brilliant, but I just didn't really like this race. I think the 2023 edition was a bit better, but we'll see over time. It started with a clash between Max Verstappen and Oscar Piastri. The Williams of Colapinto looked quick, but ended up with a DNF. And of course, Valtteri Bottas clouted Kevin Magnussen in the Haas. Bottas trying to get a seat next year for Mercedes, potentially hit the back of Magnussen, who got took out as a result, but still got the fastest lap. So that's the last time the fastest lap is going to be an F1 for like a point. In Italy, then, not really much happened in terms of racing, but there was a lot of dramatic parts about it. It was basically a repeat of Spa because Charles Leclerc did a one-stop and it was good enough to win the race. As for Red Bull, Verstappen and Russell made contact on the opening lap. Russell slid off the track. Hamilton finished 5th for Mercedes ahead of Verstappen. Sergio Perez was actually decent, but he could only finish in 8th, and Magnussen got a race ban. Now we go to Miami, where the title chase began. It's the people who call this a title fight, well, the lunatics, because it wasn't. Lando Norris, well, haven't been took out in the sprint the day earlier, managed to come through to win the race after a safety car involving Magnussen and Sargent basically got him the lead, and from there he was dominant. Verstappen finished in 2nd, Piastri was unlucky with a clash with Sainz, and unbelievably, Mercedes were actually decent for the first time ever. Then we go to the US Grand Prix, and there was a lot of crashes going on, with Hamilton and Russell crashing into the barriers over the course of the weekend, and overall, we of course saw the late battle between Max and Lando at the end, which was pretty exciting. But it was a step down compared to other US Grand Prix. Then we have the Spanish Grand Prix, which was just pretty good, to be honest. Lando bottled his start and Verstappen got ahead, but George got past both of them, just like 2013 Spain. However, the lead didn't last for long, as George Russell ultimately could only finish 4th, with even Charles Leclerc on the back of him. Mercedes weren't quite there enough to win the race, as Lando Norris also got past Lewis Hamilton, who also attacked George Russell. This was a race of the season where, though Hamilton finished ahead of Russell, it's kind of overshadowed by the fact Russell took the lead at the start. Mercedes, although fighting for victory, couldn't really do enough, and Lando just missed out. We go to Mexico next, where we had a chaotic start where Max Verstappen took the lead, and there was a crash involving the Williams of Albon and the RB of Sonoda and the Alpine of Gasly. But we had more controversy as Sainz took the lead past Max Verstappen, and then Lando and Max went wheel to wheel again and came off worse again. It looked to be Lando Norris, but instead Verstappen got 2 10-second time penalties, which basically meant he only finished 6th, as Verstappen went off the track again, dueling Lando Norris, fulfilling my opinion that Max just can't race wheel to wheel with absolutely anybody. So let's move on to the Las Vegas Grand Prix. George Russell took a dominant pole, but again Lewis Hamilton just couldn't actually qualify like a normal F1 driver and started 10th. But of course Russell went on to win, but Hamilton was by far the more impressive Mercedes driver in my opinion, though that's again more bias or British bias, as Max Verstappen would put it, as Hamilton of course came through to finish 2nd, but he carved the gap down. It was 3 seconds closer than it was at the start of the stint, and that was with all the tyres. But of course we'll just go back to Spa, which is a race where I kind of didn't know what to say. Russell got a one-stop strategy to work. However, as a Hamilton fan, I did feel kind of cheated because, you know, Hamilton did brilliantly. He got past Charles Leclerc at the start and he should have won. And of course, it kind of fulfilled all the promise of Russell's getting favouritism over Hamilton. It's not like that. Perez slipped away from 2nd on the grid at the first corner to an excellent Hamilton. But Charles Leclerc, in my opinion, was one of the stars of the show, finishing 3rd in a Ferrari that didn't have any right to be there. So we'll move on to Baku now, a race that I didn't really look excited for, even though it was a race that provided chaos, because in previous years like 2023 and 2022, it'd been pretty boring, but this year was excellent. Piastri probably shouldn't have won. Instead, it probably should have been Sergio Perez, who I actually predicted would win the race. Unfortunately for him, he didn't. As Piastri went away from the start, he went on to win the race. He got past Charles Leclerc after an excellent battle, and there was a late clash as well. We go to Qatar. Now, people will be like, what the hell is this doing up here? But of course, I just prefer chaos, and we got loads of chaos, and I kind of just wanted a simple, absolutely excellent race in terms of collisions and stuff. Hulkenberg and Ocon and the Williams of Colapinto were took out the start. Albon and Stroll collided. Joe was involved too. Max got past George at the start, and Hamilton had punctures along with Carlos Sainz. And then at the end, Lando Norris had a 10-second time penalty where he could have won. Sauber actually got points. Just so many exciting parts of the race at the end, and obviously the fight between Gasly and Sainz. It was just a fun enough race. We go to the Hungarian Grand Prix between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, where we finally saw them come together. I actually wanted to see them come together one more time because we'll never see Hamilton in the Mercedes and Verstappen in the Red Bull come together again. But 2024 duty delivered as we saw arch rivals collide, but it was all overshadowed by the McLaren team orders controversy, along with Piastri's first win, as Norris kind of refused to hand the position back. Verstappen went absolutely terrible in this race. It was one of his worst races of the year, and this was when Hamilton was actually decent. We have the Austrian Grand Prix now, and this was a race just like Imola, where the first 40 laps were boring, but there was at least still some highlights in there to make it exciting enough. But at the end, all hell broke loose as Lando and Max came together, and I could not believe what I was seeing when it happened. And George Russell came through to win with Sainz and Piastri dueling for second, but Piastri won. There was loads of chaos, of course. Charles Leclerc didn't have a good race. It was one of the races that cost them the Constructors' Championship, and Piastri probably should have won had it not been for a track limits penalty. Hamilton initially got past George Russell, which should have been for a win, but in the end he slipped to fourth as he suffered a dreadful performance. In Canada, this is one of the most underrated races of the year. People just forget about this compared to Brazil and Silverstone to a lesser extent, but all top three of this season are wet races. So, that kind of sums up, doesn't it? Russell led at the start but made mistakes and fell to third. So overall, it was an error-ridden race, and Sergio Perez crashed out along with Carlos Sainz, who hit Alex Albon, who'd made a brilliant overtake before. An underrated classic, though. Second is the British Grand Prix, which is so close to first, except I just couldn't put it first. Originally, it was first for so long. It was an absolutely epic race. Lewis Hamilton somehow won, but it was a race where so many people were fine at the front. You had Hamilton, Russell, Verstappen, well, obviously no Perez, but the two McLarens, and obviously Carlos Sainz even fought Verstappen at one point. It was a race where we saw Hamilton and Verstappen go wheel to wheel. They had a fight for the win, and of course all of the people Hamilton would beat, it was Verstappen for the win. But in first place is Brazil, which I originally absolutely hated because it really ended any faint hopes of the World Championship. So many people crashed. The Red Bulls were knocked out in Q2. Alex Jake said on the qualifying highlights commentary that no one would have expected Perez to be knocked out in Q2, which was lies really. But it was brilliant. The chaos, an Alpine double podium though, like no one expected that at the start of the year, and Max Verstappen went from 17th on the grid to win. I mean, it was a brilliant performance, but I think this was a race that showed everyone who is going to be the F1 2024 World Champion. Coming up soon though, I'll have the F1 2024 Sprints Ranked video coming out, and I'll see you next time.